choking, bro. He's choking.
Trigger warning for the following video. This includes real images of a child choking. Thankfully, the child survives and makes a full recovery. The purpose of showing this video is purely for educational purposes and to highlight the need for appropriate first aid training for as many people as possible. Viewer discretion is advised. This is the heartbreaking moment. A desperate father pleads with Tampa Police officers to help his son, who's a full obstruction after choking on a tomato. Tampa Police officers responded by trying to pat the child on the back in the hope of dislodging the blockage to allow the child to breathe again. There are two kinds of choking that can occur while eating: a partial blockage and a full blockage. A partial blockage usually occurs when a small amount of food that perhaps is partially chewed up gets stuck in the airway. Your body's natural reaction is to cough. Coughing creates a strong amount of air pressure as your diaphragm contracts forcefully and rapidly, building up pressure in your lungs. This creates a burst of air that's traveling at close to 160 kilometers per hour, forcing foreign materials towards the mouth. On most occasions, the choker will be able to free themselves from a partial blockage. A partial blockage can become a full blockage quite easily if the food isn't fully coughed out, as after the incident, the choker's first instinct after freeing any kind of blockage is to breathe in. If the foreign object that caused the initial blockage isn't completely free of the esophagus, it'll be sucked back down at a greater force than the first time, potentially causing a worse blockage to occur. If someone around you is experiencing partial blockage, depending on the severity of the coughing, a light tapping to a harder pat can assist them. However, if a full blockage occurs, you'll need to render assistance in the form of hard and sharp back blows and chest thrusts. A full blockage is when a larger piece of food or something the size and shape of the choker's airways, like a grape or a cherry tomato, especially for a child, can create a perfect seal, stopping the entry or exit of even the smallest amount of air. This has now gone from something the victim can usually easily manage themselves to a life-threatening emergency. This requires immediate medical intervention. Signs and symptoms to look out for if you suspect that someone may have a full blockage: the inability to speak or breathe, inability to cough, clutching at the throat, panic and distress, their skin turning bluish, and silent struggling. These things will eventually lead to a loss of consciousness and ultimately death if they're not assisted as soon as possible. As you can see, the child is not able to speak or breathe. There's clear panic and distress, and his father, who is panicking too, has told officers that his son was eating a tomato when it occurred.
Can you see anything in his mouth?
The child is in need of back blows and chest thrusts. To perform a back blow, place the person in a slightly bent position and preferably in a seated or anchored position. Deliver 5 sharp blows to the back at approximately 45 degrees and leave at 45 degrees. If you're performing back blows on a baby or a toddler, pick them up and lay them over your arm like this. Perform the back blows in the same spot you would land the back blows on an adult. If 5 back blows don't work, you'll need to perform 5 chest thrusts. To perform chest thrusts, place the person either standing or sitting with their upper torso locked in place by being placed against a surface like a wall or a heavy piece of furniture. Perform the chest thrust by placing your hands locked together in the center of their chest and delivering 5 sharp blows. This is going to force the chest cavity to push whatever pressure is below the blockage towards the mouth. You'll want to generate enough force that can dislodge the blockage that's about to kill them. Don't be too afraid of hurting them, as the other side of the coin in this scenario is death. So I'm sure they're going to be thankful for some sore back and bruising when you've chosen to save their life instead. In Australia, you're also protected under the Good Samaritan Act. These are put in place for a situation just like this. If you're performing these back blows with the full intention of aiding them, with the assistance that will ultimately help save their life, then you're protected. No one in Australia has ever been successfully sued or been charged for injuring someone while saving their life. Repeat the chest thrusts and back blows until the person no longer has a blockage or until they go unconscious. If that occurs, you will need to follow the doctor's ABCD protocol. In this desperate situation, the child required back blows and chest thrusts to give him the best chance of survival. As the video goes on, we can see the desperate officers pat harder and harder multiple times. The child continues to struggle while his desperate father can be heard in the background. Eventually, the child is bent over slightly and the pats become firmer and harder, which is much better, but still the child needs harder blows than this to create the force necessary to dislodge the tomato stuck in their throat. The officers then pull the child's head back and point his face and mouth up towards the sky. Again, while the officers had the best intentions trying to save the child, as they were trying to see what was stuck, this is not what you should do if you're trying to help someone who's choking. If those pats the officer had just performed had worked, the dislodged object is likely sitting in the child's mouth. And if he breathes in, it will force the object back down to the throat to cause another blockage. Make sure you keep the person bent over facing towards the ground until they are clearly breathing and communicating again. This will force any blockage removed during back blows to fall out of the mouth. The child continues to struggle and they bend him over and pat him firmly on the back again. It's just not quite hard or firm enough. The child now can be heard, which may indicate that the blockage has been partially removed. However, they again allow the child to look directly up again, causing gravity to potentially drop it back down the throat. This is now a long time of not performing any back blows or chest thrusts. Heartbreakingly, the child begins to go limp, showing signs of loss of consciousness as the situation gets desperate. One of the officers tries one final ditched attempt to save the child's life. This is when the child appears to cough and spit, before finally being able to vocalize his relief. Finally, for the first time, nearly a minute into the video, the child can be heard taking his first breaths that come through like desperate gasps. The child can be seen later in the video hugging the officers who saved his life. While the officers got their job done, it was clear that panic and maybe a lack of first aid training is potentially to play. At First Aid Pro, our first aid trainers will teach you how to perform back blows, chest thrusts, CPR, and dozens of other life-saving and injury-assisting techniques that could be the difference between life and death. Whether you're a parent, sibling, friend, co-worker, or just a fellow Jane or Joe, being first aid certified will ensure you're equipped with all the knowledge you need to stay calm and save a life. And with face-to-face online learning and even Zoom first aid courses, it's never been easier to be first aid certified. And with training locations all around the country, First Aid Pro is one of Australia's most accessible first aid training providers. So what are you waiting for? Visit firstaidpro.com.au to book your first aid training course today.